The soft morning light filtered through the windows of my gallery, illuminating the white walls that were filled with vibrant colors. Each brushstroke I had made on the canvases seemed to vibrate with a life of its own. But amid all that beauty, a shadow lingered within me. Observing the piece that was displayed on the wall in front of me, I felt an emptiness, as if each color and shape could not capture what truly resided in my heart. It was as if I were trapped in a blank canvas, unable to move forward. I murmured to myself, "Why can't I feel fulfilled?" as I approached the painting. It was a landscape of Hangzhou, with its serene lakes and majestic mountains in the background, but the image I saw did not reflect what was in my soul. The sky should have been blue, but what I saw was a gray hue, clouded with uncertainties and restlessness. The color palette I had used spoke not of the life I desired, but of the life I feared. "Hey, Lian!" A familiar voice interrupted my thoughts. I looked up and saw Wei entering the gallery, his smile bringing a wave of nostalgia that enveloped me. It was good to see him again, although his presence also stirred a sense of discomfort. He had always been a dear friend, but there was something different about us now, as if the time and experiences we had lived had distanced us in a way that even I couldn't understand. "Hi, Wei. I'm glad you came," I replied, trying to hide the confusion that was building inside me. "What did you think of the exhibition?" "It's beautiful, as always. You've really evolved as an artist," he praised, moving closer to the painting with an admiring look. "But you seem a bit distant. Is everything okay?" "Yes, of course." The response came out more automatic than I would have liked. "Just a little tired, I guess." Wei watched me for a moment, his eyes penetrating and understanding. He always knew when something was wrong, but I wasn't ready to share the shadows that haunted me. It was easier to put a smile on my face and ignore the nightmares that plagued me at night. "Do you remember our escapades in the woods when we were kids?" Wei suddenly asked, causing memories of laughter, secrets, and sunny afternoons to flood my mind. I recalled the times we got lost among the trees, laughing and dreaming about the future. "Of course I remember," I replied, an involuntary smile appearing on my face. "That was so much fun. The woods always felt magical." "It was a special place for us, wasn't it?" Wei said, a tone of melancholy in his voice. "Sometimes I wish we could go back to those days when everything seemed simpler." "I do too." The sadness in his voice echoed within me, and the nostalgia turned into a weight. The childhood laughter now felt so distant, as if it belonged to another life. What had happened to that innocence? We got lost in memories for a while, but the conversation soon dissolved into an uncomfortable silence. I knew there was something I needed to tell him, but the thought of opening my heart about the nightmares that tormented me felt unbearable. The fear of appearing weak paralyzed me. Night fell quickly, and I returned home with a whirlwind of emotions. The darkness seemed to reflect my inner state as shadows stretched across the empty streets. As I lay down, the tension in my body prevented me from relaxing. I closed my eyes, but dreams awaited me, ready to take me back to the woods. And so, I was dragged into the dream. The space around me was a labyrinth of tall, dark trees, their leaves whispering secrets I couldn't understand. The air was heavy, and the moonlight barely penetrated the dense foliage. I knew this place was familiar, but at the same time, there was something terrifying about it. The ground was covered in thick fog, and each step I took seemed heavier than the last. "Why are you here?" a voice whispered, and I turned quickly, coming face to face with figures from my past. They were there, shadows of moments I would rather forget. Each face was a memory I tried to bury, but now they seemed to stand before me, demanding recognition. Please go away, I screamed, but my voice sounded weak and powerless. The fog thickened and I could barely see. The figures approached, their empty eyes staring at me as I backed away, feeling panic rise. The woods, which once were a magical place, had now become a prison. I woke up with a start, my heart racing and breathless. The darkness around me felt oppressive, and I forced myself to remember that it was just a dream. But the feeling of fear lingered, like a shadow that was not ready to leave. I got out of bed and walked to the window, looking out at the illuminated city below. Hangzhou was calm, but inside me, the storm continued. The next morning, a ray of sunlight came through the window, and I felt a little more centered. Life went on, even as I struggled against my own demons. I decided to meet Wei at a nearby cafe, hoping his company would help me put some order to my thoughts. When I entered the cafe, the aroma of fresh coffee and baked goods enveloped me like a warm embrace. Wei was already there, sitting at a table near the window, with an attentive and worried expression. He stood up when he saw me, and his expression was a mix of happiness and concern. "Hi, Lian. How are you?" he asked, pulling a chair out for me. "Hi, Wei. I'm fine, just a little tired," I replied, trying to keep the conversation light. "And you?" "I'm fine, but you don't seem okay. What's going on?" The sincerity in his voice made me hesitate. He had always been good at sensing when something was wrong. "I really am okay," I insisted, even though I knew I was lying. I had a strange dream. Strange dreams can be disturbing. "Do you want to talk about it?" He leaned forward, his eyes fixed on mine. His concern was palpable, but I didn't know how to explain what was happening inside me. "No, it's just a silly dream," I replied, looking away. "Nothing I can't handle. You know you can count on me, right? I will always be here for you," he said softly, and for a moment I felt tempted to open my heart. But something inside me shut down. I didn't want to appear weak. I didn't want him to see the chaos that was settling in my mind. The conversation flowed to other topics, but the shadow of my nightmare lingered, hovering like a dark cloud. As we talked about our lives, childhood memories, and the adventures we had together, I realized that even amidst the laughter, there was something unsaid hanging between us. The connection was there, but I didn't know how to bridge the gap that would lead us to a deeper understanding. Time passed quickly, and as we left the cafe, a sense of melancholy washed over me. The daylight seemed to shine brighter, but the weight of my fears was still present. I looked at Wei, who walked beside me, and wondered if he also carried secrets he dared not share. What else were we hiding from each other? "Shall we take a walk by the lake?" I suggested, needing a moment of tranquility. The lake always brought me peace and clarity, and I hoped that by walking, I could find an answer to what was tormenting me. "Sure, I'd love to," Wei replied, smiling. And so we walked in silence, side by side, as the sun began to set, painting the sky orange and pink. The beauty around us was almost surreal, but inside me, the struggle continued, and I knew that sooner or later, I would have to face not only my dreams, but the secrets those dreams brought to light. The morning sun filtered through the trees of the Buddhist temple, creating a play of light and shadows that danced gently on the ground. As I entered, I was enveloped by an aroma of incense that seemed to have the power to calm even the most troubled mind. That place was an oasis of tranquility, and I was there in hopes of finding a bit of peace for the storm raging inside me. The monk who welcomed me had a serene expression. His eyes conveyed a wisdom that seemed to transcend time. He greeted me with a slight nod, and upon noticing my state of mind, asked, "What brings a young artist like you to this temple?" I hesitated for a moment. The words felt stuck in my throat. Finally, I took a deep breath and said, "I'm pursuing a peace that feels increasingly distant. I've been having disturbing dreams, and I feel I need to understand what they mean." The monk smiled gently and led me to a quiet space where we could sit on cushions spread across the floor. He began to speak about the nature of fears and how often we choose to run away from them. But in truth, the real path to peace is to face them. Lian, fears are not enemies to be avoided. They are disguised teachers. Only by facing them can you truly set yourself free, he said, his voice calm and deep. I felt a wave of resistance within me. How could I confront something that left me so vulnerable? But there was a spark of curiosity in me, a hidden desire to understand. What if I don't know how? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The first step is to acknowledge that they are there. Then, you must invite them to reveal themselves. Through meditation, you can begin to see the truth they hide, he replied, looking directly into my eyes. I fell silent, absorbing his words. In that moment, I realized it might be time to face the forest of my dreams, rather than simply escape from it. The idea made me nervous, but also a little empowered. I thanked the monk, and as I left the temple, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in a long time. That night, as I laid my head on the pillow, anxiety and anticipation mingled. I knew I would return to the forest, and as my eyes closed, I was swept into the dream world once again. This time, the contrast was unexpected. The forest was brighter, the trees were no longer threatening shadows, but rather silent witnesses to my journey. However, in the background, a feeling of familiarity called to me. When I looked closer, I saw a figure standing among the trees. Lian. The voice was soft, almost like an echo. The figure looked at me with a smile that was both comforting and unsettling. "Who are you?" I asked, a mix of curiosity and fear in my voice. My heart raced in my chest. "I am the part of you that you forgot, the part that is trapped in this forest." Whatever this figure was, I felt it was an extension of myself, a part that had never been fully integrated into my life. "What do you want from me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I want you to see me, to face me." "You cannot keep running away," it replied, extending a hand as if it wanted to pull me closer. The scene began to fade away, and I realized I was about to wake up. A sense of urgency washed over me, and I shouted, "Wait, don't go!" But all that remained was emptiness, and I woke up feeling that something important had been lost. The next day, my mind was restless. Before the sun even set, I knew I needed to return to the forest. I looked out the window of my studio, watching the trees sway gently in the wind, and a determination began to form within me. I could not delay any longer. With a light jacket and a sketchbook under my arm, I left the house. The path to the grove felt shorter and more familiar, and each step brought me to a more concentrated and focused state of mind. When I finally reached the entrance, a wave of nervousness hit me, but also a vibrant anticipation. The trees towered majestically around me, and sunlight filtered through the leaves, creating a pattern of shadows on the ground. I took a deep breath and began to walk. With each step, the feeling that something was about to happen grew stronger. "I'm here," I murmured to myself like a mantra. With every word, I felt closer to the figure I had seen in my dream. The shadows danced around me, and the air seemed charged with energy. After a while, I saw a clearing ahead, and my heart raced. This was where dreams intertwined with reality. When I entered the clearing, my breath caught. The atmosphere was thick with a sense of expectation, as if nature itself was waiting. And then I saw her. The familiar figure was there, clearer than ever. "You found me," she said, with a smile that mixed joy and sadness. "What are you?" "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice trembling with the intensity of the moment. "I am you, Lian, the part of you that fears and longs to be heard. I am what you left behind when you decided that your fears were stronger than your hopes." Her words resonated in my mind like an echo. I knew her, but at the same time, I didn't. She was the insecure child I had been, the artist who hesitated to express herself. I don't know how to deal with this, I confessed, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. The figure stepped closer and in a gentle gesture touched my arm. You don't need to know everything now. Just start to listen to me. Together, we will face what haunts us. With that invitation, a wave of courage began to form inside me. The grove was no longer a place of nightmares, but a space where I could explore my pain and my beauty. Let's go, I whispered, and together we began to walk, one step at a time, toward the unknown I was finally ready to face. The gentle breeze that blew between the trees of the grove wrapped around me, bringing a familiar scent of damp earth and dry leaves. The feeling was comforting, but at the same time, a wave of anxiety washed over me. I was there, in a place that was both a refuge and a labyrinth of memories. Each step I took seemed to echo in a deep and dark space within me. Finally, after so long dreaming, I was face to face with my nightmare, but also with the chance to confront something I didn't fully understand. As I explored the grove, my eyes fixed on an object that was partially buried beneath a layer of dry leaves. As I approached, my heart raced. It was an old stuffed toy, a long-eared rabbit that I recognized instantly. The rabbit, now faded and missing one eye, was a symbol of my childhood, of a time I had tried to forget. I knelt down and, with trembling hands, pulled it out of the ground. "How did you end up here?" I asked aloud, as if the rabbit could answer. "Lian." The voice came from behind me, and I turned quickly, the rabbit still in my hand. A girl, no more than 7 or 8 years old, stood there. Her gaze was a mirror of mine, filled with fear and insecurity. The same features I knew so well, but with a fragility I couldn't bear to see. It was me, but it wasn't. It was the younger version of myself, the one left behind in some dark corner of my mind. "Why are you here?" Her voice trembled, and I felt the weight of her pain pulsing like a drum in my chest. "You shouldn't be here. This place is dangerous." I don't know," I replied, my voice wavering. "I just wanted to understand. What happened to us?" She looked down at the ground, her hair falling over her face. "No one understands. No one comes here. They're afraid." The girl pronounced each word with a care that made me want to hug her. She was alone and scared, and I, even being the older version, felt the same loneliness. "I'm not afraid of you," I said, trying to sound firm. "I am you, memories and all. I'm here to help you." "You can't help me," she replied, her voice choked. "You left me behind. You never came back." Each of her words was like a knife cutting through the veil of my self-pity. I had forgotten her. In fact, I had buried that part of myself, like the stuffed rabbit in the ground. "I didn't know how to deal with all of this," I said, feeling tears start to gather in my eyes. I was scared. I'm still scared. Scared of what? The girl looked at me, her eyes shining with a mix of curiosity and pain. "Scared of not being enough. Scared of not being able to face what happened. Scared of losing you again," I confessed, my voice breaking. The air around us felt dense, as if the forest itself was listening. She took a step forward, her small hands clenched into fists. "You need to listen to me, Lian. We can't go on like this. You need to face me. You need to be strong." Her words hit me like lightning. Through that scared child, I saw the strength that had always been there, but that I had suffocated. It was true, I had to be strong. For me, for her, for everything I left behind. "How can I do this?" I asked, the vulnerability in my voice echoing in the silence of the grove. "You need to accept that I am part of you. You can't ignore me. I am what you left behind and what you need to confront," she said, and the sincerity in her voice made me feel a weight lifting. If I wanted to move on, I needed to face the pain I had hidden for so long. But how? I was confused, lost in my own maze of emotions. What do I need to do? The girl looked at me with a determination I didn't know still existed in me. You need to remember. Remember what happened. Remember who you are. And so, in that moment of revelation, a torrent of memories began to flood my mind. I remembered running through the woods, playing with my stuffed rabbit, the laughter I shared with Wei. But I also remembered the day everything changed, the day my world collapsed and I lost not just my toy, but an essential part of myself. I can't, I murmured, the pain rising to the surface. It's too painful. What if I can't? What if it destroys me? You can't destroy yourself more than has already been done, she said, and there was a childlike wisdom in her words that touched me deeply. You need to face it. I'm here with you. I felt her strength wrapping around me, as if the courage I had lost was resurfacing through that child. I took a deep breath, and as I looked at her face, I saw the reflection of everything I had struggled to hide. The pain, the insecurity, and above all, the need for release. It's okay, said the younger version of me. You're not alone. You never were. I want to be strong, I declared, the determination growing within me. I want to face this. I can't live in the shadow of fear anymore. In that moment of clarity, a sense of relief began to spread throughout my body. I knew the journey would be difficult, but more importantly, I wasn't alone. The girl in front of me was proof that I still had a connection to my past, to my memories, and to what I could become. Shall we go together? I asked, reaching out my hand toward her. She hesitated for a moment, but then, with a shy smile, took my hand. Yes, together. And so, in that shadow-filled forest, I began to understand that true strength is not the absence of fear, but the ability to confront it. The pain of the past was not something I could simply erase. It was part of me, part of my story. And now, I was ready to rewrite that story, one brushstroke at a time. The morning light filtered through the windows of my studio, but the sense of clarity it used to bring didn't manifest. I was trapped in a labyrinth of thoughts and emotions, and the only way out seemed to be that conversation with the monk at the temple. I remembered his words. Face your fears, Leon. Forgiveness is a key that opens doors you didn't even know were locked. With that in mind, I decided it was time to go back. When I arrived at the temple, the air was infused with the scent of incense and flowers. The monk greeted me with a serene smile, and I could sense that despite my uncertainties, there was comfort in his presence. Lian, it's good to see you again. What brings you back? He asked, his eyes deep like a calm lake. I feel like I need more guidance, I replied hesitantly. I'm struggling with my fears, and with each passing day, they seem to get more intense. Fears are often shadows of something we don't want to face, he said, gesturing for me to sit down. Why don't you tell me about them? At first, the words piled up in my throat. It was hard to expose the vulnerability I felt, but the monk's compassion made me feel safe. I have a recurring dream. In it, I'm in a dark forest, surrounded by figures from my past. It's as if they're accusing me of something, as if I'm running away from myself. He nodded slowly. What if I told you that these figures represent parts of you that need to be recognized and accepted? Fear is not an enemy, it's a messenger. What is it trying to tell you? The question reverberated within me. I had always thought of fear as something to be fought against, but what if it was, in fact, a guide? I don't know, I murmured, feeling tears in my eyes. Maybe I'm afraid of not being enough. Then that's what you need to confront, said the monk. Forgiveness is the first step. You must forgive yourself for not being perfect. What do you have to say to that part of you that feels insufficient? Those words penetrated my soul. I had always sought perfection in my art, in my relationships, and had forgotten that beauty lies in imperfections. "I forgive myself," I began, though the phrase felt strange on my lips. "I forgive myself for not being who I expected to be." The monk smiled, and a wave of peace began to spread within me. Forgiveness is liberating. Now go back to the forest and be open to what you will find. Remember, you are stronger than you think. That night, sleep didn't come easily. Fear and anticipation danced in my mind. But finally, I fell asleep. And as always, the forest appeared before me, shrouded in shadows. However, there was something different this time. A soft light, like a beacon, seemed to call me. When I reached the point I recognized from my dreams, the younger version of myself was there, with a glow in her eyes that reflected a hope I had forgotten. "Leon," she said, in a gentle voice, "come with me." I followed her, my heart racing. The younger version of myself led the way, and with each step the shadows seemed to dissipate. "You don't need to be afraid," she said. "I'm here with you." "But what will we find here?" I asked, apprehensive. "What if it's something I can't face?" "You are stronger than you think," she repeated, and suddenly she turned to me with a look that seemed to pierce my soul. "We're going to a special place." We walked to a clearing illuminated by the moonlight, where a cave loomed impressively. The air around seemed to vibrate with a palpable energy. As we approached that cave, my heart raced. "This is the place where your fears hide," she said, and I could feel the truth in those words. "But I'm so afraid of what's inside," I confessed, feeling a wave of panic. "What if I can't handle it?" "You're not alone, Leon," the young woman replied. "I will be with you. We will face this together." With a deep breath, I took the first step toward the cave, and the darkness enveloped me like a cloak. The smell of damp earth and mold was intense, and with each step, the tension grew. The interior of the cave seemed endless, and the light from the entrance became a distant point. "I can't do this," I murmured, stopping. The young woman with bright eyes turned to me. "Yes, you can. Remember what the monk said. Fear is a messenger." With renewed determination, I continued walking. Then, suddenly, the darkness ahead began to clear. And there, in the dim light, a series of mirrors appeared, reflecting not only my image, but all the insecurities I carried. Each mirror seemed to look at me with a silent judgment. One showed the insecure artist, unable to detach from criticism. Another reflected the young woman who feared abandonment. I wanted to look away, but something stopped me. "You have to look at this, Leon," the younger version of myself said. "You need to understand what these fears mean." "But I don't want to see," I replied, my voice barely a whisper. "What if I get lost?" "You won't get lost. You will find yourself." I took a deep breath and approached the first mirror. As I looked into it, I saw the young woman who dreamed of being an artist, but felt like a fraud. "I feel so small," I murmured, "like I'm never good enough." "What would you say to that part of you?" the young woman asked. "I would tell her that it's okay not to be perfect, that I am a growing artist, and that the journey is more important than the final result. Then tell her that now," she encouraged. And with all the strength I could muster, I declared, "I accept you. You are enough as you are, and your art is valuable." As the words left my lips, the mirror began to shine, and the image dissolved like dust in the wind. A wave of relief washed over me, and I felt lighter. One by one, Leon, the young woman encouraged me. "Let's break down the barriers together." Gradually, I looked at each mirror, and with each recognition and acceptance, something inside me broke. The cave, which had once seemed a place of fear, was now a space of transformation. I was beginning to understand that facing my fears didn't mean defeating them, but rather accepting them as parts of me. But there was more to discover, and I knew the journey was not yet over. I felt the air grow colder as I approached the entrance of the cave. It was as if nature was breathing more slowly, as if aware of what I was about to face. The daylight barely penetrated there, and the darkness seemed alive, almost pulsating. My heart raced, not only from anxiety, but also from the anticipation of confronting everything I had hidden from myself. With one last deep breath, I entered. The interior of the cave was surprisingly spacious. The walls were covered with moisture that dripped in small droplets, reflecting the light coming from outside, creating an almost magical effect. But there was no magic there, only a dark space that held my deepest insecurities. I looked around and realized the cave was filled with mirrors, each framed differently, but all reflecting a distorted version of myself. I approached the first mirror. The image I saw was of a young artist, but her face was marked by doubt. "You're not good enough," I heard a voice whisper in my mind. I remembered all the times I had hesitated to expose my work, fearing judgment from others. "You're not a real artist," the voice continued, echoing inside me. I closed my eyes, trying to ignore the echo of my own fear. "That's not true," I said aloud, as if the cave itself could hear. "I am an artist. I created each of my works with love and dedication." But when I opened my eyes, I saw that the image in the mirror had changed. The young artist was now crying, her eyes filled with pain and despair. I couldn't bear to see her like that. On impulse, I struck the mirror with the palm of my hand. The glass cracked and shattered into 1,000 pieces, and a wave of relief washed over me. The sound of the shattering echoed through the cave, as if it were releasing not only the mirror, but also the pain it represented. The next mirror was larger and more imposing. I looked at it and saw the image of a lion wrapped in insecurity, surrounded by criticism and disapproving looks. "What are you doing with your life? Look at you! No one cares about what you do," the figure said with a sarcastic smile. "I care," I shouted, my voice reverberating off the cave walls. "I'm doing what I love, and that's what matters." With a sudden movement, I threw myself against the mirror, and it shattered with a deafening sound. I felt a lightness wash over me, as if each broken piece of glass was taking away a bit of my weight. It was like I was shedding an invisible burden that I had carried for years. Then I faced a mirror that seemed to reflect not only me, but also the expectations others had for my life. "You should have a serious job. This artist life is a foolish dream," the image said, a version of me that had let herself be swayed by external voices. "I don't need anyone's approval," I declared, feeling the fury swell inside me. "I'm the only one responsible for my life." I jumped toward the mirror, and it shattered in an explosion of fragments that danced in the air. With each break, I felt the chains of doubt snap one by one. My breathing grew deeper, and the weight on my chest lessened. The cave now felt less oppressive, more like a space of liberation. Finally, I faced the last mirror. It was the largest and most intimidating of them all. Looking at myself, I saw a version that reflected all my frustrations, all the moments I felt incapable. "You will never be what you dreamed. You are weak and do not deserve to be happy," the image whispered, and a wave of despair almost made me retreat. But instead, I moved forward. I was no longer willing to allow these fears and insecurities to control my life. I took a deep breath and with all my strength shouted, "I am strong, I am capable, I deserve to be happy." With a determined movement, I threw myself against the mirror. It burst into 1,000 fragments and the cave was filled with a thunderous sound. The moment the glass broke, a wave of heat and light enveloped me. I felt as if, through that break, I was releasing all the ties that bound me to the past. The pain, the doubt, the insecurity, all of it was now in the past. When the dust settled and the echo of the broken glass faded, I realized that the young figure who had accompanied me until then had vanished. I looked around and there were no more mirrors. The space seemed broader, more illuminated. I was alone, but I no longer felt isolated. The voices that told me I was not enough, that I was unworthy, were gone. The exit from the cave was clear before me, and as I approached, a sense of peace began to fill my heart. With each step I took, I felt as if I was leaving behind not only the weight of the past, but also the shadows that had followed me for so long. I am free, I murmured to myself as I crossed the threshold between the darkness of the cave and the light of day waiting for me outside. The fresh air and sunlight greeted me as if nature celebrated my victory. I had faced my fears and for the first time felt I was in control of my own life. The freedom I sought was not just in art, but in accepting who I truly was. And as I left the cave, I realized that the journey was not over. There was much to explore, much to learn, and I was ready for it. The gentle breeze of the forest caressed my face as I walked, feeling the confidence pulsing in my veins. The sun filtered through the leaves, creating a pattern of light and shadow that was almost hypnotic. I had undergone a transformation over the past nights, and each step I took felt lighter, firmer. My heart was open, and I was ready to face whatever came my way. It was then that I spotted Wei standing by a tree. His gaze was intense, and I could see a worry on his face that made me hesitate for a moment. He always had that way of caring for others, even when he was struggling with his own battles. His presence brought me an unexpected comfort, and I knew I needed to share with him everything I had experienced. "Hi, Lian," he exclaimed, forcing a smile that didn't seem completely sincere. "Are you okay?" "I'm better than ever," I replied, a bit more enthusiastic than I intended. "I went to the forest again and, well, I faced my fears." Wei raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "Really? What happened?" I sighed, sitting on a fallen log and gesturing for him to join me. "I found a cave. Inside there were mirrors, each reflecting a part of me that I didn't want to face. I broke them all. It was liberating." Wei's expression grew more serious. "Sounds intense. Do you feel different now?" "Yes," I replied, looking at the ground before meeting his gaze again. "I feel like I finally accepted my past. And more importantly, I'm ready to face the future. But what are you doing here? You look worried." He hesitated, looking to the trees for words. "Actually, I have also been thinking a lot about things from the past. It has to do with my childhood. I don't know if I ever told you, but I had a very close friend when we were kids. He suddenly disappeared, and I never knew what happened." My heart raced. "Wait, are you serious? You never mentioned this before." "I know," he replied, his gaze distant. "I think it was always something I tried to forget. But after you started talking about your dreams and fears, I realized I needed to confront that too. There's something holding me back from moving on." "And what is it?" I asked, sensing the urgency in his voice. He took a deep breath, and I could see the internal struggle on his face. "I've always wondered if somehow I could have done something to prevent what happened, if I had known where he was. If I had searched harder, maybe things would be different." "What do you mean by that?" I inquired, chills running down my spine. "I had a brother," he confessed, his voice almost a whisper. "His name was Lian." The word brother echoed in my mind like thunder. "Wei, are you talking about me?" He hesitated before nodding. "Yes. When you started having those dreams and talking about your past, I began to wonder if there was some connection. If you were the Lian I knew. The revelation hit me like a blow. You are my brother." "I think so," he replied, and the truth was there, raw and undeniable. When we were kids, we were inseparable. But something happened. I don't know the details, but I always knew you were out there, somewhere. Memories began to bubble up in my mind, fragments of a past I had always tried to bury. I remember you. I remember a boy who made me laugh, who was always by my side. But what happened to you? Why did you leave? I was separated from you, he said, the pain explicit in his voice. Our families had a falling out, and I was sent to live with another family. I never understood why, and for a long time I felt lost. From that day on, you became a memory I couldn't leave behind. I stood up, in shock. This can't be true. Why didn't anyone tell me? Why didn't you say anything? I didn't know how. There were so many things that happened, and I just tried to move on, but you've always been in my heart, Lian. Every time I think of you, I feel like a part of me is missing. A wave of emotion washed over me. I don't know what to say. This changes everything. I know, he said, a look of hope in his eyes. But maybe together we can understand what happened. We can uncover our stories and heal one day at a time. The idea of having my brother back, of having someone who understood my struggles, filled me with an inexplicable comfort. Yes, I would love that. We need to understand each other. We need to close this cycle. Wei smiled, a renewed spark in his eyes. Let's do this together. We don't need to rush anything, but I'm here for you, Lian. As we walked back through the woods, a sense of renewal formed between us. The fears I had confronted, the truths that emerged, everything seemed to connect in a grand mosaic of understanding and acceptance. The past couldn't be changed, but now we walked together, ready to face the future and uncover what fate had in store for us. And so, with our hearts intertwined by a bond that had never been broken, I knew the journey was just beginning. Now let's take a brief reflection. In life, we often run away from our fears, trying to avoid them. But as we learned in Lian's story, fears are actually disguised teachers. They invite us to look within and confront the parts of ourselves we have left behind. When we accept our weaknesses and embrace our insecurities, we find an inner strength we didn't even know we had. What lessons can you take from this journey? What in your life have you been avoiding facing? Leave in the comments what you thought of this story and which lesson resonated most with you. We're curious to know how this journey inspired you. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this that make us reflect on life and help us find inner peace. And of course, watch the upcoming videos. You will be surprised by other beautiful and transformative stories. Until the next video.